Hi, I'm Bob Vila. Welcome home again. It's the next to last show here at the restoration of the Richmond, Virginia Governor's Mansion, and today we're going to give you a sneak preview of some of the moving-in operation. Some of the beautiful antiques are coming back into the mansion. Also, we're taking you to Colonial Williamsburg, where we'll see how they made furniture back in the 18th century, and also visit with the ladies who make the draperies, all the hand stitching that goes into providing these beautiful drapes that are going to be hung here in the mansion. Stick around. It's good to have you home again.
Sears presents Bob Vila's Home Again.
The landscaping around the back side of the mansion is nearly complete, and because we're right on the edge of a busy city street, they've chosen to put in a lot of these American hollies, which when they mature will get to be about 15 or 20 feet high and really screen the mansion. From this vantage point, you can get a good shot of the completed addition to the mansion, which is a 3-story masonry affair that includes an accessible elevator. One thing that's really cool is that the porch that the architect designed incorporates a concrete slab that's been poured right as a roof, but it's at the same line as the water table of the antique house, so that when you see it from certain vantage points, it really disappears. It's a lot better than having a gabled roof or something like that. And then, of course, the family's moving in. You can see some of the rubbish of moving is already in place. Let's go around the front of the house and we'll get together with John Paul Hanbury, the architect. Hey, John Paul.
Hey, Bob.
Wow, this is really coming together. Isn't this great? You know, I wasn't very enthusiastic about the red, gray, and black carpet that you were talking about, but this really looks beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We think so.
And the gray throughout the spaces, you know, when you think gray, you wonder, isn't it going to be a little drab? But it really is magical with the mahogany and stuff.
Well, it's historically correct. We picked off the colors, the historic colors in the other rooms, brought it out into the hall, adjusted a little bit for other things we wanted to do. And the good thing is that we had this historic blue, which we reinstituted.
So the blue in the baseboard, we know, is a historic document color.
And it segues very nicely into the room beyond.
But here, look at when this piece comes into the room. The mahogany and the gilding and everything really stands out against the neutral grays of the walls. And then the other thing is the woodwork.
Well, it just highlights it. It was very bland before, sort of off-white and cream, and now we have the contrast.
Yes. Cream is out, gray and white is in. It's beautiful. It's just coming together beautifully. And of course, this is an exciting point in any job when the movers bring all the good stuff back, but it hasn't been put in place yet. And Barbara Page, who's the interior designer on the project, hi.
Hi.
How are you? So
Fine,
you're not pulling your hair out yet, I hope?
No, not yet.
Yeah. Now tell me a little bit about how you arrived at the color schemes for the furniture and everything else for this room.
Well, it started off with this document border.
The blue that we were just talking about on the baseboard?
It comes in from the foyer. So that color, such a regal color for a ballroom, we then picked it up.
Now, this is what we're looking at in the perimeter of the ballroom, which is a wallpaper border, right?
Right.
And that's what you see up there now. And then you went from there to all these fabrics.
Right, the wool moreen, and then, of course, the scrape leaf here picks up and is repeated in our border around the room.
So these are all documentary.
These are all document.
Historic patterns and
Exactly.
colors. And, of course, the draperies, and we'll be looking at that a little bit later
Right.
in the show. But what do you have under here?
This is the summer dress. This is the glazed chintz that will recover these wools that might be a little heavy in the summer. This will be cool and light, and the furniture will be covered in this.
So it's not a dress you're going to wear. It's kind of 18th century fashion where you covered things up for the summer. Well, I can't wait to see that. And this, of course, is one of the tougher parts, right, John Paul? You suppose we should give them a hand?
Well,
putting up the big
mirrors
old mirror?
are going back up.
Yeah. And they, of course, have already pre-measured and pre-drilled up on the wall where they've got their shields in place, and I'm glad I'm not standing under that. Nice job. Coming up next, a visit to the cabinet maker's shop at Colonial Williamsburg. Stick around. We're in Colonial Williamsburg, about to visit one of my favorite attractions here, the cabinet maker's shop. Let's go inside and say hello to Corey Loftheim. Hey, Corey. Nice to see you.
Hello, Bob. Welcome.
Right. Isn't it amazing that there's been a cabinet shop here for over 2 centuries, practically 2.5 centuries?
Yeah, our mission today is a little different, though, than 200 years ago. We're generally involved with our curator furniture in refurnishing the exhibition buildings. And the big advantage we have as cab makers, is having physical access to the originals. We've got some examples here. These were prototypes, practice pieces, things we want to commit all of our mistakes on.
Mostly chair or table legs, right?
Right.
What's this?
This is one of 3 legs that the master of the shop did in preparation for a pillar and claw table.
Okay. So there would have been 3 legs attached to a central
Pedestal.
vertical pedestal.
And a tilt top.
Yeah, beautifully carved. And this is a spade foot, right?
Right.
What would this have come off of?
This was the leg for a Pierce Gallery china table. This particular shop is responsible for a number of china tables and tea tables, the like of which we were unaware of was being done in colonial America.
And the originals of these pieces are here in certain museum settings, right?
A lot of these in our museum here.
Yeah. And what do we have going on over here?
This is Chris Wright.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, Bob.
How are you?
Good, thanks. You?
You're carving a ball and claw, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. This is based on an antique table in the collection here in Williamsburg that is attributed to this shop about 1760, actually.
And would walnut have been the wood of choice back then?
It is the predominant material used in Virginia furniture due to its abundant nature.
And it was less costly then than mahogany, which would have had to have been imported.
About half the cost, yes, at
Now,
that time.
what will that leg eventually go on to?
Onto a gaming table.
Oh, it's
or
right in front
card
of me.
table, if you like. Yes,
It's right in
yes.
front of me. Yeah.
That's half of the second one that I'm preparing here for the Raleigh Tavern.
Okay. And the this part of it would be the gate leg. Is the
Right.
one that's behind you already completed?
This
or?
one's essentially assembled. It hasn't been varnished yet, but it's the same table. And this back leg, just if you've noticed, swings open to support the tabletop when it's open for play.
Excellent.
And most of this top will be covered then with a green fabric, much like a billiard table,
Right.
for a variety of card games and dice games and so forth.
And tell me, will the finishes that you apply to it be historic finishes?
Yes, sir. In this case, I'll likely use seed-lac varnish. It is essentially the unrefined form of what we know today as shellac.
Right, which comes from the wings of a little bug in India, I'm told. What other projects are going on in the shop?
We've got a beautiful walnut linen press over here that Bill is working on.
Now, this is in the finishing stages, and you said it's a press, a linen press. Where does that come from?
A linen press or clothes press is a case piece for the storage of folded bed linens, clothing. And I understand it comes from a French term referring to storage. Usually they have raised panel doors hinged in the front.
It's like an armoire, and of course the wood is walnut, isn't it? Again, the native material that is, or traditionally has been so accessible to you here in Virginia. Is this part of the same board? This looks like it's one solid board, right?
Right, same board on the other side, and this is what we had left of that.
Can I take it home? No, just kidding. So this is one full thickness, full piece on both sides. And what is our friend working on over here?
Bill is working on the OG bracket feet for this case.
Now, Bill, before I go any further, how long does it take to make something like this?
This piece will have about 200 man-hours of work in it, Bob.
And have you been working on it alone, or?
No. Actually, 4 of us worked on this piece.
Tell me about the feet.
Well, these are called bracket feet, OG-type bracket feet.
The OG refers to this curve.
The curve in it, right.
Yeah. And of course, what we see is walnut, right?
American black walnut. Now, it's backed up with blocking of southern yellow pine. Now, this blocking is put in layers. The piece right here on the end, the grain is running this direction. And the piece underneath it, the grain is running the opposite direction. And that alternates back and forth through the whole back of the foot.
Which gives it stability.
It does, added strength, and the weight of the piece is actually not resting on the foot itself, it's resting on the blocking.
On the blocking, yeah.
Right.
And the piece is heavy. Now, I noticed that the secondary wood throughout is this southern pine in all the shelving and all the vertical pieces in here, right?
Right.
Now, what's still left to do here? The doors don't quite seem finished.
Still have to raise the panels. And one of the distinctive features about this case is its indented corners here at the top of the panels.
Oh, right here, yeah.
Right. It's just 2 pieces that are mitered and glued and then set into that rabbet and shaped out. And the panels will repeat that same indented profile.
This is called pinched, right?
Or indented.
Or indented. And then the panels will float. They won't be...
Right. Now these won't be built into the frame on its assembly, but they'll lay into the back of the frame like a piece of glass into a picture frame.
Sure. Hey, Bill, how do you make this frieze? What's this called?
Wall of Troy molding.
Wall of Troy.
Right. We start out by cutting out pieces like that, alternating on each side. And once we have done that, then we cut these strips off of it.
So you can basically just slice some of it off.
That's right.
And then you just glue it on?
Once they're cut out, we glue them right onto the flat that's on the cornice molding itself.
Exactly. And this is on there. It's not.
It is.
It doesn't come off.
And this cornice molding took 7 different molding planes to make the molding.
And all of it planed by hand.
All done by hand.
Well, it's spectacular to see all of you guys keeping these arts alive. Thanks very much for sharing.
You're welcome.
Okay. Next, we'll be hanging new draperies on the ballroom windows at the Virginia Executive Mansion. Catherine Arnold from the design studio at Colonial Williamsburg and Ruth Hubbard, our draper. How are you, ladies?
Hi, Bob. How are you? We're fine.
I'm fine, and I guess you're sorting out the pieces of the puzzle here, right?
Yes, we are. We're trying to get up another window.
And it's a big job. How many hours will it take to get one window put together?
Oh, it took us about, what, 4 hours yesterday
Yeah.
to get this
Very
one up right here.
complicated.
Yeah. Now let's get the roles right, because you're the designer, but we also have an interior designer on the whole
Yes.
project. And so the two of you collaborated?
Yes, I'm more of the historian, making sure that the curtains have been constructed appropriately
Right.
for the period of the house.
Right.
Ruth is the actual mechanical person putting these ideas into
The
practice.
draper, as it were,
Yeah.
which is an 18th century term, mostly men, I think, but drapers were the decorators and upholsterers who actually draped the stuff. And that's where the
Exactly.
word
They
comes
actually
from.
used to drape windows like they do
I
upholstery.
love the way you described that. Yeah. So what are the different parts of the window
Well,
treatment?
this is a very new curtain for the early 19th century. It's called French drapery, and there's several parts to it. This is the hanging curtain that was very popular in the 18th century. It's just a straight curtain, and it just hangs, and
It's
we
a panel,
therefore call
and
it a
you
curtain.
can just work with it and close
Any way
it
you
up,
want to.
or you can just gather it back up
Exactly.
and put the, what do you call this, the tie back?
It's tie back on it.
together. These are beautiful. Now, did you make these?
Yes, these were done by a person in our, Sue Kavanaugh, in our sewing room, of the wood molds that have been used for the
Off
trim.
the trim.
Made
the
out of
curtain.
silk?
Yeah.
Everything's out of silk and incredibly handmade. The, at the top of the curtain, you'll see swags and jabots or swags and tails. And this is combining two of the favorite curtains of the 18th century into a new curtain for the 19th century. And it's now decorative. It doesn't work any longer. It's just to be pretty.
Okay.
And all of the trim on the curtain has been applied just so that it will accent the folds or the contours of the curtain, and that's the draper's job, to make sure that we have absolutely perfect folds in the curtains, and you'll see that when Ruth works with her hands on them.
Now, this is like a separate ribbon that was
Yes.
sewn on here, right?
It was a separate ribbon, and the ribbon, a miniature of that has been used for the wood mold that you see at the top.
What do you call this ribbed kind of fabric?
It's just a ribbon like a girl
Just
might
a
have put in
ribbon.
her hair, but it's a
Okay.
much wider one.
Well, recently I visited Colonial Williamsburg and saw the ladies at work putting all these pieces together. Watch. Now, Ruth, I know that we've tried to replicate the same types of fabrics that would have been used in the mansion historically a long time ago. What are these fabrics?
This is a silk taffeta that would have been used, you know, at that time that the mansion was built. These are imported from France, which is the same way they would have got, same place they would have got them from.
This blue
back
is just
then.
unbelievable.
And
If you
this
had
is the
told me
most
that this
beautiful
was,
blue.
yeah, if you had told me that this was some sort of space age fabric, I would have said, okay. It's just gorgeous.
Well, this is the lining. This is actually the lining, and it's also a pure silk taffeta.
Now, if this is the lining
Yes.
and it's exposed to the sun, is that a bad idea?
Well, you know, it can damage the fabrics over time, but we have put an inner lining inside that will help protect the face fabric, which is the blue one. You know, in time, eventually the linings will have to be replaced.
Right. What is
But they
this?
have. Now, this is the top curtain, and this is what they're calling a hammered silk. It's going to be, the swags and the jabots are made out of this, and it hangs over the top of the panel, of the blue panel.
The swags and the jabots are out of hammered silk. Now, when you're going to do this, how do you get started?
Well, we start with a pattern.
So is this the design?
Yes, this pattern was taken from, this picture is taken from the White House Blue Room, and so we decided to make our pattern from this. We thought that'd be quite lovely.
Oh, it's got
And
gorgeous window treatment, yeah.
And so I made the pattern next, and I like to use old sheets for making the patterns. This is the swag up here, a festoon sometime as it's known, and this that hangs down here is called the jabot.
And you just old cotton sheets, huh?
Right. They just really hang nicely.
Well, they do. They hang beautifully. And then once you've made this pattern, do you take it back to the mansion to make sure it's right?
Yes, we do take it back to the mansion and hang it up at the window to make sure the proportions are correct on it. Once that's done, then we're ready to start working on it.
Because the designer can't really tell you what the proportions are. You got to do a model in order to understand.
Just like with all things.
Yeah.
And here's one of the panels here that Margie's working on.
Now, this is probably the easiest part of the whole job, right?
Yes, it's just big. And she's sewing the inner lining in here. This is the inner lining that we use to protect the face of the fabric.
Why don't you do this with a sewing machine?
Well, we use curved needles and sew it by hand because the fabric is so delicate. If you put a machine on it, it would run the fabric.
What does that mean, running the fabric?
You know, you can get like a little run in it. You know, it'll
Oh.
pick the thread.
Yeah.
You know. And so we're also putting a pellon in here too, because this is going to have pleats at the top, so that will give it a little more body since it's such a soft fabric.
I see.
To hold the pleats in.
All of it by hand. That's amazing.
And
this would be one of the jabots?
yes, this is jabot, and Sue is finishing up the finishing stitch on the side. You know, this is, it looks like it's machine sewed closed, but it's actually all hand done. And this is how we close our fabrics up.
Now, the needle is like a sailmaker's needle.
Yes, it's a curved needle, and we like sewing with those. You can pick up just the littlest bit of fabric with it so that you don't see your stitches, and then your hand doesn't get as tired when you sew with the curved needle. You can just roll right along.
Yeah, she certainly can go fast with
And
this.
Yeah.
And so
see.
the ladies over here are at an earlier stage, or is this a swag?
This is a swag right here,
Okay.
and they're attacking the inner lining to the face of the fabric to hold it in place.
And
this is
again,
a
using
festoon.
curved needles.
Yes, we're still using the curved needle to pick up just a little bit because we don't want the stitches to show on the front side.
So this is what the end result will look like.
Yeah, this is one that's finished,
Beautiful
and
job.
it is just beautiful. Yeah, and this is FSC.
Well, lots of different pieces, but boy, when they all come together, it's such a beautiful window treatment. Now let's talk about how you install it. What's he doing up there?
Well, he's just putting the medallions up there, and the medallion, we have drilled a hole into the plaster and inserted a plastic sleeve. And then we have a dowel screw that is screwed into that, and that's holding the medallions in place.
And there won't be too much weight off of that, right?
No, no.
Is the weight
just
off of this piece?
Yeah, the weight's on this piece. This is the piece that's going to hold the panel and the blue festoon that's on the very top. The screw eyes will hold the drapery pins, will be hooked into those, and then the blue panel, the blue festoon on the top will attach to that.
Because this, we have to remember, is stationary window
Exact-
treatment.
yes.
It doesn't close up, but the interesting thing is that by using Velcro, if it needs to come down quickly to be dry cleaned or whatever, you can do it that way.
Exactly. You can handle and take care of them a lot better when you have the Velcro and the screw eyes.
Okay, we'll
'Cause
be
it-
ready for a panel in a minute. All right, hook that up. Now, is this the right swag?
Sure is.
Yes, that's
one
the
on the
next
left,
one to
huh?
go up. These have the Velcro on it so that they Velcro together up here. Those ones are nice.
When we come back, we'll finish hanging the draperies in the mansion ballroom. Don't go away. And here comes the last swag, ladies. You've done a great job.
Oh, thank you, Bob.
Absolutely. We're running out of time. Come home again next time. It'll be the final visit here at the Governor's Mansion. We'll give you a complete tour of the inside of the house as well as the grounds. Till then, I'm Bob Vila. It's good to have you home again. For lots of information and resources for your home improvement project, check out my website at bobvila.com.